Have you ever found yourself on holiday taking incredible pictures with your brand new action camera underwater, only to come back home and find that the pictures are all saturated blue messes? Well, today I'm going to show you how you can fix those blues.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you've seen in the title of this video, today we're going to be talking about those underwater pictures and how to edit them. So if you've seen my Instagram recently, you'll have seen that it's pretty much all underwater pictures and videos, and that can be a little bit daunting for people when they're first starting off. So today I'm going to try and give you some tips and tricks as to how I edit my underwater pictures. Before we get started, just a couple of disclaimers. Firstly, that this is just my style of editing. You're free to edit your pictures in whichever way you want. I'm just going to show you the kind of blues and tones that I like in mine. The second is that while this video is aimed at helping you edit your pictures, it can't actually make up for a poor quality picture. So don't message me saying the video sucks because it couldn't fix your picture that you took on the 1 megapixel action camera that you bought for a $5 off wish.com. So in this video I'm going to be editing on Adobe Lightroom Classic. It's what I use for all my pictures, whether they're underwater or on land. And I think it's what most people really use these days to edit their pictures. So the steps and techniques that I'm using in this video can be done on Photoshop as well. It's just going to look differently because of the layout. And if you don't have Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom, you can use any other editing software that gives you full control over all of the settings in the picture. And don't worry if you don't have an Adobe subscription, skip to this time frame and I'm going to show you how you can edit your underwater pictures for free using the Adobe Lightroom mobile app. And don't worry if you think this video doesn't apply to you because you don't have £1,000 plus worth of underwater camera gear. Everything I've ever shot underwater has been taken on GoPro. Recently I've been using the GoPro Hero 7 Black for about the last year or so. So you don't have to be a pro to be able to edit your underwater pictures, any novice can do it as well. Today I'm going to be running through 2 editing examples of underwater pictures. The first being the classic saturated blue mess that I'm sure anyone that's taken underwater pictures is familiar with. And then the second example is going to be a similarly saturated blue picture, and I'm going to show you how to edit it for free using the Adobe Lightroom mobile app. Now that all that boring stuff's out of the way, let's jump into Lightroom and get into the fun part of editing. So this is going to be the first picture that we work on today. It's a marble stingray that I took during the deep dive portion of my advanced PADI qualification. It's taken somewhere between about 25 and 30 meters. So as you can see in the picture, there's really no warm tones in it. It's all just blues and kind of greens. It's quite noisy as well if you zoom in on it because it's taken really quite deep down. So the ISO is quite high, I think probably around the 500 to 600 mark. So it's a bit grainy. So I'm going to show you how in just a few clicks we're going to turn this from a blue mess into a far better natural looking picture. So what I would normally do in this situation when I'm editing a new underwater picture is come across to the side tab here and check if one of my underwater presets works on it. I've designed a few presets to help speed up the underwater editing process. But for this video I'm going to show you the basics and how to manually edit all the settings. So first things first, what you could do in a lot of cases with underwater pictures is just try and use the white balance to fix it. So you could use this picker here and try and pick a neutral colour. So sand would normally be kind of white or yellowish. So if you pick it and say we do it there, it gets rid of the blue, yeah sure, but as you can see it's kind of this weird reddy purple colour, and in my personal experience I find this way harder to get rid of later on, and I think the way that I'm going to show you is a bit nicer. So we're just going to Control Z that, undo it. We might come back to the white balance later just to like fine tune it, but as I said before it's taking quite deep down, so there's, you know, it's not the best exposed picture, so we're just going to up the exposure a touch, just to about 2 clicks. And I personally like quite contrasty pictures. I think it adds more emphasis and draws your eye to the picture when you're just glancing at pictures. So I'm going to up the contrast. As you can see, like bring it up or darken the actual ray and all the background as well. So we're not going to push it too much because there's going to be a blue mess again. So we're just going to up it to about between 15 and 20, I reckon would work. Yeah, around 20. Highlights, there's not a great deal of highlights, but we're just going to bring up the highlights. If you see, you know, you bring it up, play with the sliders, and you're going to see that it's in the sand mainly. And one of the things that I really want to do to this shot is bring back the white in the sand and make it more natural looking. So we're going to up it a fair amount, probably to about 75. The shadows are mainly going to be in the background and on the actual ray, as you can see there. So I want to darken the background but not the ray. So what I'm going to do is just bring it up a little bit, just to about 9, and we'll fix the background later on with something else. Whites and blacks we're just going to leave alone for now, there's no problem there. Texture and clarity is kind of like a personal preference. I tend to like quite a lot of texture and clarity in my pictures, depending on the shot. On this kind of shot, I'm probably going to want the background to not have a lot of texture, and I want the emphasis to be on the ray mainly. So we're going to leave the texture as it is and just bump the clarity a little bit. Dehaze we're not going to touch for the time being. It's a super powerful tool. I'm going to show you a little bit more about it on the other shots, but for this time, probably just going to leave it for now. Vibrance, I tend to just increase vibrance a lot of the time and then decrease saturation to kind of compensate so it's not super saturated. So around about there. Obviously none of these are like finalized numbers. We're going to come back and tweak them and you can alter them to whatever style you want, but this is just like a basic guideline for now. So then the next thing we're going to go to is the tone curve. This is potentially one of the most powerful tools on the panel here, and we're just going to do a standard S-curve to start off with. For anyone that's kind of new to this and doesn't know an S-curve, it's pretty much just where here is where the shadows kind of are and the blacks, and then here is where the highlights and the whites are. So we're just going to bring a little bit of fade into the blacks, bring them down a little bit to make them darker. As you can see, just have a play with it and you can see what happens there. You bring it up and it's going to fade it out more, bring it down and it's going to darken it. So we just want to do a little bit there. We'll leave the midpoint and then increase this bit a little bit. So as you can see, there's just a slight S in the curve, and that's just what we want for now. So if you flick that on and off, you can see not a huge deal of difference, but enough. Flick that back on. And then next we're going to move on to the HSL tab. And this is pretty much where all the magic is going to happen, and you're going to see how little we have to do to make a massive impact on this picture. So if you just do a cursory examination of the picture, you can kind of just see that there's mainly only blues in this picture, no real reds and oranges and yellows. But if you want to see, just have a play with the slider and you can see nothing is changing because they're not present in this picture. It was taken so far down and it was taken without a red filter as well, so there's no warm tones in this. So mainly what we're going to be dealing with is aquas, blues and potentially purples, but mainly aquas and blues. So aquas are obviously your light blues that we see mainly in the foreground here, and then your dark blues are here in the background. So what you can do is, if you slide it to the left, you're going to see it makes the picture a lot more yellow. And if you're wanting your sand of a more yellow tone to your sand, definitely do this and move it to the left. But I prefer it more white, and I want to have a contrast of the white sand and the dark blue background. So what I'm going to do is shift it back this way towards the blue. As you can see there, it kind of brings back the white, but the more you go, it becomes more purple. So I want it somewhere in between, around about the 40 mark I think would work. And then with the dark blue, you want to bring it again to the right hand side, but this is very powerful. You can see what a massive difference that makes. So you just want to just slightly nudge it because it's already a super blue shot. So then if we flick it on and off, you can see it's coming together a little bit. You can see that's quite a big difference already. Looking a bit more natural. The purples, we can play with it. Normally purples in these kind of underwater shots, they're found in the dark blues at the back of the shot. This one doesn't seem to have any, so we're just going to leave that and just use these two sliders for now. So down to the saturation, you obviously don't want to bring the saturation up if you're going for a less blue effect. So we're going to bring it pretty much all the way down, and just look at that. Look at the difference that makes. You pretty much, fixed it just by doing that. But we're going to do a few more tweaks to it. The dark blue, we want to bring it up a little bit because you can see it's mainly in the background, and if you desaturate it, then it's just going to be a desaturated mess, and it's going to emphasize the grain here in the background. So we're going to saturate it a little bit, probably a decent amount, to about 35 I reckon would work. We still got some grain in the background, but there's now not so much in the foreground in terms of blue. And then the luminance. So this is just how much light, how light or dark, whichever colour you choose, is going to be. So I want the sand to be super bright and very contrasty to the dark abyss in the background and kind of show off that contrast. So we're going to bring up the white of the sand, and then we want to make the background a lot darker. So I might even push it all the way to about 100. So as you can see, if you flick the before and after, there's quite a lot of change that we've done already in just a small amount of work. And to be fair, you'd be perfectly fine just leaving it as it is. It's much more natural than it was before. You can see the sand is way more white and natural looking, and then there's that dark blue in the background. But I'm going to show you a couple more tips just on this one to kind of take it to the next level. So the next thing we're going to do is go down to the details tab. As you can see, there's quite a lot of noise in the background and a little bit in the foreground as well, just because it was taken so deep down that the ISO has bumped up quite high. But we're just going to increase the noise reduction a tiny bit to about 18. It will help a little bit, but then we're going to top it up a little bit later. And then we come down to the calibration tab, and this, along with potentially the HSL, is the most powerful tool that Lightroom has to offer, and it's why I think a lot of people use this as opposed to other softwares. So with this, you can actually change the complete dynamics of a picture and just the complete way that it looks. So the blue primary is probably the most powerful of the three here, so you can just see how much of an effect it has when you swing it either way. But we just want to fine tune it for this basically. So what we're going to do is I want to make the background a little bit darker in the blue. And so if you swing it to the right, you can see, there you go, that's about right, 24. Flick it on and off, and you can see it darkens the blue in the background, makes it a bit more blue, and brings out a few more warm tones in the foreground. We could probably do with pushing it a little bit more, so maybe to about 30. Yeah, and then you can play with the others. You'll see what happens when you move them either way. So with green, we want to push it more towards the yellows, I guess. We'll leave that as it is. And then the red, you push it one way, it's going to make it a lot more blue. You push it the other way, and it's going to bring out more warm tones in it. So for this, maybe we push it to the right just a touch, so about 9. So if we look back at the original picture, a complete blue mess, completely saturated. We look at it now, more natural looking. There's more warm tones in the picture. Keep the blues in the background, and there's a nice contrast between the foreground and the background now. So I'm just going to close off the calibration tab, and you'd be perfectly fine with this picture as it is, right? It's so much better than before. Look at that, before and after. But now I'm just going to show you a couple more tips that I would use just to take it to the next level and just fine tune some of these bits here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go up here and grab the graduated filter tool, and I'm just going to drag it from the bottom up to just when it starts to meet the ray. And the reason why it's so white there is because I always have the exposure set to the max just so I know what I'm doing and where it's covering. So we bring that back down to 0. And what I want to do here is I want to bring a bit more white into the sand, make it shine a bit more, and a little bit more contrast in it. So we're just going to bring up the whites a little bit, not too much, and about 14, 15. Increase the contrast a bit, and then I'm just going to up the clarity a little bit. It's going to help darken down the foreground a little bit and just emphasize the little specks and imperfections in the sand. So we'll bring it up just a tiny bit to around about 10, 12-ish, I reckon. Yeah, and then depending on what kind of look you want to give it, if you want to give it more of a soft look, you could bring the texture down, or if you want to give it more of a textured look, up it obviously. But I think I'm going to just reduce the texture a little bit because we increase the clarity. And then the next thing I want to do is just bring down the noise and make the background a little bit darker. So bring another graduated filter there, bring the exposure back down, bring the sharpness all the way down to 0. It's going to help with the noise there. And then maybe bring the shadows down a bit and the exposure just a touch. And bringing the blacks down a touch will just give it another dimension to the background. So now, as you can see, there's a nice difference in gradient in the background. There's dark blues at the top fading to this nice kind of aqua blue in the mid section here. And then the foreground is completely fixed. There's a lot more natural look to this, and it's pretty much what it would look like if there were a white light shone on it. So that is your after, there's your before, and we really haven't done that much work to it. It's been just a few simple steps, nothing too complicated, and we pretty much fixed this picture. So that's the first saturated blue mess that we've edited, and I hope you can see that with just a little bit of work you can take it from a completely blue picture to a more natural looking image. Now let's take a look at the second image. So the first thing you want to do is jump onto your phone and go into the App Store and download the Lightroom mobile app. It's completely free to download, and if you already have the Adobe subscription on your desktop, you can just sync your account and all your settings from your desktop version are going to sync onto your mobile version. So once you've done that, import in the picture that you want to edit. In this case it's going to be this green turtle that I took a picture of. It's super shallow in the water, so we're lucky to still have some warm tones in here. And then you'll see that the controls are pretty much the same as for the desktop version, they're just laid out differently. So first things first, we're going to fix the exposure. It was taken pretty shallow in the water, so there is a decent amount of light coming through, so we'll just bring the exposure down a little bit. The main thing I want to do with this shot is reduce the saturation. It's just overly saturated with everything. We're quite lucky in that we've got the nice reflection at the top of the water of the turtle's head. Then if we scroll up and click the curves button, this is the same as the curves in the desktop version, so we're just going to start off with a basic S curve. Create a 3 points, bring down the shadows a little bit, up the highlights a touch, and we're going to introduce some fade into the shadows. Next we're going to come across to the color tab. We're going to leave the temperature as it is and decrease the saturation just a touch. And then we're just going to scroll back up to the mix tab, and this is pretty much the same as the HSL tab on the desktop version. So we'll start off with the aquas. We'll shift the hue towards the blue more a little bit, bring down the saturation probably all the way, and increase the luminance. Then go across to the blue tab, shift that to the right a little bit. This is going to have a major impact on things, as you can see how much the majority of the image is blue, so we just want to play with it a tiny bit. Next we're going to come across to the effects tab, increase the dehaze quite substantially, and increase the clarity but decrease the texture. And now that's actually a pretty good edit, and I'm pretty happy with that. Now there are a couple features from the premium version of Lightroom Mobile that we could use just to elevate these a little bit more. In order to access these features, you'll have to pay the $4.99 per month subscription fee. You could always just start the 7-day free trial and cancel the membership if you don't like it. So for the purposes of this video, let me show you what additional features you could access. So with the subscription, you have access to the gradient filter, the brush, and the radial filter. So you can find those under the selective tab here. So normally what I do for this one would be, you press the plus button and then choose the gradient filter there, and I'll drag a gradient filter across the bottom of it. And just like I would on the desktop version, probably bring the exposure up a touch, increase the highlights, increase the whites, then come across to the color tab, decrease the saturation, increase the dehaze just a touch probably. And then I'll drag another gradient filter down from the top here, just to where it starts to meet the turtle's head and where the reflection is. And I would increase the highlights on that, increase the exposure ever so slightly, come across to the effects tab and increase the clarity but decrease the texture. You could also use the brush to brush around the turtle and increase the clarity. So that's it, the before and after. It's pretty amazing what we've done to take it from that oversaturated mess to looking pretty decent now. So those are the two pictures that we're editing today, and hopefully you've picked up some tips that you can use in editing your own underwater pictures. Honestly, it's not that difficult, and it's all about having a play with the settings and just finding your own style and your own rhythm. One thing that's definitely helped me is my underwater presets that I created. They're basically just a way that I can edit a lot of my pictures in one click, almost like applying a filter, and then you just fine tune it. In this video I pretty much showed you the techniques that you can use to go through individually each image and change the settings, but with presets what you can do is you can just apply them across the board to a set of photos that you took at one time, and then they'll all be edited in a similar style. So I actually made a preset pack with the presets that I personally use to edit the majority of my pictures. So I designed them to cover a range of scenarios, from super saturated blues to fixing white sands to even helping you with those split shots. If you're interested in trying them out, I'll leave the link to my website in the description below. The download comes with both mobile and desktop preset files, so you can edit on whichever device you want. So if you're on the move, traveling, and you don't have your laptop with you, you can just edit the pictures on your phone and just throw them up into your social media straight away. The pack also comes with an instructional video that teaches you how to alter the settings of each preset to fit your individual picture. And because I appreciate you if you've made it this far in the video, I'm giving you the chance to download my base preset called Fishhead for free.
The first 15 people that use the discount code YouTubeFam can download it for free on my website.
So that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you've picked up some tips and tricks that you can use to edit your own underwater pictures, and anyone that was on the fence as to whether they're going to take underwater pictures or not, hopefully this is giving you the motivation to go out and get those shots. Hit the thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video and make sure to subscribe to the channel. I've got loads more videos coming soon. Tag me on Instagram and any pictures that you edit using these techniques. I'd love to see them, and let me know in the comments below if you want to see more of these editing videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.